It's Mrs. Sharpley. We are going to do a notebook page today on sea turtle migration. All right, I've went ahead and I've glued in my side that had my text on it. It says sea turtle migration informational text, which of course informational text means that we're going to be reading nonfiction text today. My other sheet I haven't glued in, but you want to go ahead and just glue it right on that edge. So that way it will flip up. Then after you have it glued, or I guess you could have cut it first if you wanted to, you're going to go ahead and cut your little slits. Have your different questions on them. Someone wants us to cut through the little turtle there, so I guess we will. All right, so we are going to read the sea turtle migration together. The first time we read it, it's just going to be a nice little cold read where we read it from beginning to end. We're not going to annotate or highlight or do anything like that at first. We're just going to do one cold read first. All right, so sea turtle migration. The nesting ritual of female sea turtles is one of the most fascinating behaviors in the animal kingdom. Female sea turtles migrate back to lay their nest on the same exact beaches where they were born. At night, they slowly crawl out of the ocean and scoop out the best possible spot to lay their eggs. Once they have found a dry part of the beach to make their nest, they begin to fling loose sand with their flippers. They make a hole deep enough to fit their body by rotating themselves and using their flippers to dig. Then, under the hole, they create another smaller cavity just big enough to hold their eggs. This is exhausting work for the sea turtle. She lays anywhere from 80 to 120 eggs at a time. Once her eggs are safe in the cavity, she uses her rear flippers to push sand over the eggs and then packs more sand on top to disguise the nest. It is important that she conceal her nest from potential predators. Once she finishes laying her eggs, she never returns to the nest. Instead, she returns back to the ocean. Scientists are unsure of how sea turtles navigate their way back to the same beach where they were born, but they believe it has something to do with the Earth's magnetic field. They think the sea turtles detect longitude and latitude through this field, which help them return to these beaches. Scientists also believe the ocean's current and water chemistry may play a part in finding these locations. Sea turtles migrate through the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Ocean. These journeys can be hundreds to thousands of miles long in distance. The migration of sea turtles is quite an impressive voyage and one that remains a great wonder of the animal kingdom. All right, so let's go ahead and take it from the top, shall we? All right, it says sea turtle migration. The nesting ritual of female sea turtles is one of the most fascinating behaviors in the animal kingdom. The word ritual is really standing out to me because it's something that maybe a word that I don't use every day. It might be relatively new to you as well. It says the nesting ritual of female sea turtles is one of the most fascinating behaviors in the animal kingdom. So that word we may not. All right. So that word. Having some lighting issues. Sorry about that. All right, so that word is something that's maybe a little bit new to us. And as I'm reading the sentence, the nesting ritual of female sea turtles is one of the most fascinating behaviors in the animal kingdom. It's not necessarily giving me any kind of clue what that might mean. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it as a question mark, and I can always come back to what that word means. It says female sea turtles migrate back to lay their nest on the same exact beaches where they were born. That is actually really interesting for me, the fact that they come to the exact beaches where they were born to build that nest. So they lay their nest at the exact beaches where they were born. I think that's very, very interesting. All right. At night, they slowly crawl out of the ocean and scope out the best possible spot to lay their eggs. So they come out of that ocean and then they kind of look around, okay? So that's when they're looking for that good spot. So looking for a good spot, okay? And then as a reader, I can kind of stop and think, what would maybe make a good spot, okay? Do they want a place that's, maybe more hidden and a lot of other animals can't find it? Do you think they really want to make their nest by where a lot of people are maybe like setting up a camp or close to a lot of buildings or a lot of noise? So what would maybe be a good spot for them? Once they have found a dry part of the beach to make their nest, they begin to fling loose sand with their flippers. So I do know what would maybe make a good spot is that it's going to be a dry part. So they want something that's dry, okay? They make a hole deep enough to fit their body by rotating themselves and using their flippers to dig. So it seems that their flippers are a very important piece, okay? So those flippers are very important because it's mentioned a few times about them using it. Okay. Then under that hole, they create another small cavity just big enough to hold their eggs. Let's take a look at the word cavity there. Okay. When I think cavity, the first thing that comes to mind is the cavity that the dentist tells you that you don't want in your teeth. And so I'm kind of thinking about what that cavity in my tooth is, which is basically like a little hole, a little opening. And so this cavity is the same idea. It's just that when they're building this hole, they're making another little tinier hole for those eggs. So we can just maybe write a tiny hole here. Oops, not that kind of hole. Hole. All right. This is exhausting work for the sea turtle. She lays anywhere from 80 to 120 eggs at a time. Ooh, I think that is very interesting. 180 to 120 eggs at a time. Once her eggs are safe in the cavity, she uses her rear flippers to push sand over the eggs and then packs more sand on top to disguise the nest, okay? So when I see this word disguise, okay, I kind of think about like when a person maybe is wearing a disguise. And when they're wearing a disguise, they're kind of hiding who they are. And so when they're going to disguise their eggs, they're actually just hiding their eggs as well. Okay, so hiding. So it says, once her eggs are safe in the cavity, she uses her rear flippers to push sand over the eggs and then packs more sand on top to disguise the nest. It is important that she conceal her nest from potential predators. So it's saying conceal, which again is another new word for me. However, right now they're talking about, the sentence before they're talking about disguising it and hiding those eggs. And then the next sentence is saying it's important that you conceal it because of predators. And I know a predator is an animal that like attacks another animal or eats another animal. So conceal probably has the same meaning as disguise. Okay, so that's actually my context clue right there that's helping me. Once she finishes laying her eggs, she never returns to the nest. Instead, she returns back to the ocean. Okay, so she lays her eggs and then leaves. My goodness. Okay, so she lays eggs, then leaves and doesn't go back to the nest. That's really, really interesting. Instead, she returns back to the ocean. Scientists are unsure of how sea turtles navigate their way back to the same beach where they were born, but they believe it has something to do with the Earth's magnetic field. So I'm looking at this word navigate, and maybe the word navigate will remind me of another word that I've seen before, maybe navigator. So navigate, they're navigating back to the same beach, which navigate means to like find a path or your way, find a way. Okay. They think that sea turtles detect longitude and latitude through this field, which help them return to these beaches. Scientists also believe the ocean's current and water chemistry may play a part in finding these locations. Sea turtles migrate through the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Ocean. So we've got quite a few oceans on our Earth. However, that's where we'll find sea turtles the most, is in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Ocean. So I think that's interesting. These journeys can be hundreds to thousands of miles long in distance. I think that's really, really interesting, actually, that there's such long distances. Oops, sorry about that. There are such long distances, however, they always make their way back to lay eggs there. Okay. So the migration of sea turtles is quite an impressive voyage and one that remains a great wonder of the animal kingdom. So impressive may not necessarily be such a new word for us, because we can maybe think impressive reminds us of impress or impressed. But then when you put it with voyage, voyage is like a journey, okay? So it's just something it's maybe a journey that is impressive. Journey that impresses us. Okay. All right, so now we have our questions, and on our other side, it says, what type of informational text is this? Explain how you know. So just a reminder, when we are reading informational text, all of our text is going to be a historical text, a scientific text, or a technical text. So if you need to flip back into your notebook and look to a previous chart, you could do that. But a historical text is going to give you something about our history or a historical event. A scientific text is going to give us something about science. It can be something like space or anything about animals, etc. Then we also have our technical texts, and our technical texts are typically teaching us how to do something. It's giving us all of our things that we're needing to complete something, and then it's giving us step-by-step instructions on how to do it. Then it says, briefly explain the process of a sea turtle making their nest. It says briefly, emphasize that word briefly. So we really shouldn't be rewriting everything we just wrote. We should probably have maybe 2, maybe 3 sentences explaining to us how about the turtles nesting. And it says, what do scientists believe are the reasons that sea turtles are able to migrate back to the beaches where they were born? Okay, we're going to really want to make sure that we go back to the text on that one, because you are actually going to find that reason in the text. Okay, so that's something you're going to be able to see. It says, how does the Earth's magnetic field possibly help sea turtles to navigate their way through the ocean? Again, you'll be able to see that in the text. And explain what you think happens once the sea turtle eggs begin to hatch. Use the text to help you infer these ideas. So you're going to come up with your own thinking on what you think happens, but you're going to want to be sure to use the text to support that reasoning. So you can't just decide what you think is going to happen. If you make a decision on what you think, then you have to say, I think this because the text says this. All right. All right, so now that we've gone through and annotated our text, we need to reread our text from beginning to end one time. So every time we read a text, we really should be reading it 3 times. You should have that initial cold read, you should be annotating your text, and then you should be reading it from beginning to end one more time. And then once you read it one more time, you'll be able to, or ready to answer those questions. And once you've answered those questions, then you will turn in your notebook where your teacher has asked you to do. Okay? All right, have a good one, guys. Bye.